Crystia!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. There was a video on this channel about a week to a week and a half ago talking about Naheed Nenshi and his bid for Alberta's NDP and why it is so dangerous right now that a vast majority of Gen Z voters, as well as the boomer generation, are slated to pit him up against current Premier Danielle Smith in the next provincial election. Now, when municipalities like Calgary are currently arguing that non-Canadian citizens should have the right to vote in municipal elections, Naheed Nenshi is definitely a high-end contender to allow things like that to go through, despite Danielle Smith and others within the Alberta Provincial Caucus saying that we're not going to allow this to pass. If somebody like Naheed Nenshi gets in, if you think Justin Trudeau is bad, this is even worse for people. And one of the things that was touted in that video that I wanted to go back to is the argument between him and other runner for the NDP leadership, Sarah Hoffman. Now, you'll remember, if you watch that video, this clip here, discussing what went on with some land grabs in Calgary when disgraced mayor or former mayor Naheed Nenshi was at the top of the chain. I want to play this clip because there's a lot of context as to where this video is headed. Let's take a look.
I've mentioned housing is one of the biggest crises here in Calgary, and there were 170 affordable housing homes in Midfield Park, and I need to know from you, Naheed, why you closed that park, why you evicted those folks. I've talked to many of them, and they are still paying their mortgages, and many of them experienced homelessness.
Sure, happy to answer that, off topic, but happy to answer it. I don't know if you ever went there. I don't know if you ever saw those so-called affordable homes. I'm sure you didn't, but the decision was a hard one. It was an incredibly difficult one, but we ensured that every single tenant who was there had the opportunity to move into a Calgary housing home with priority. And every single one of them who needed to be rehoused in a better place got that better place.
Well, I talked to Callan, and Callan had an affordable home. He bought his trailer for $55,000. He was a newlywed. They were excited to start their family. It was a great place for them to live, and they had a great time there. And he ended up having to move in with his in-laws and leaving Calgary. He took that $55,000 mortgage with him. Thanks for the $10,000, but he's still paying off that mortgage today, 6 years later. He and his family did not think that that was a good move. They were all over the news. They were all begging to have their homes preserved. They were originally promised by you and council that they would be moved to another area, but that never came through. So many people experienced homelessness, and I did not expect somebody who identifies as an NDP mayor.
Do you actually have a single example of someone who experienced homelessness, or are you fear-mongering here, Sarah?
Well, I'm telling you, he had to move in with his in-laws and live in their
so
basement, so they didn't have a home.
So you don't.
Now, not only is Naheed Nenshi's blatant disregard for Callan and his family by bursting in saying, did anyone actually experience homelessness? Of course, he's referring to the fact that Callan and his family had to move in with his in-laws, still carrying that $55,000 mortgage after being offered only $10,000 on this project for what they called affordable housing. I want to touch base on what happened in Calgary with another project while Naheed Nenshi was in place. Right down here in the middle of the map, where my mouse cursor is, you're going to see an area called Shawnee Slopes. Now, where these houses are sitting used to be a golf course. In fact, one of my very first summer jobs as a teenager was working on this golf course owned by the Shaw family in Calgary. Now, this whole green space that you see, if you're not from Calgary, up top here is Fish Creek Provincial Park. This is a government-protected provincial park that spans the entire, well, a very good portion of the south end of the city. And of course, greedy land developers wanted to build houses on this golf course. They said it was going to be affordable housing. This was a project Naheed Nenshi put through, despite cries and pleas from city residents saying, we need to keep this golf course. We'll sell it to another buyer. We'll try and find somebody who's interested. They didn't care. They wanted to sell it off and essentially build homes on it, as Naheed Nenshi claimed were affordable homes, because, I mean, they don't want to cause homelessness in Calgary. And of course, the Midfield Trailer Park buyout was separate from this one, but this was another project. Now, if we take a look at Shawnee Slopes, let's see how affordable that housing is. $388,000 for a 700 square foot 2-bedroom condominium. $774,000 for a 1900 square foot 4-bedroom home. We've got Shawnee Common here, $448,000 for a 1,200 square foot condominium. 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. We've got a $900,000, 2,300 square foot home, 3 bedroom. That looks like affordable housing to me. 2,300 square foot home. 2,200 square foot home over here for $750,000. I mean, this goes on and on. Like if you go down here, $289,000 for a 600 square foot one bedroom condominium. This isn't affordable housing. This isn't affordable housing. Now, what does all this have to do with this video and what we're talking about? Well, Callan, the man who was mentioned in this argument between Naheed Nenshi and Sarah Hoffman, is of course here to talk to us today. And I want to sit down with him to discuss things because when I launched that video, one of the things that was very surprising to me was Callan's mother chimed in on the comments. Very grateful she's a viewer of this channel, but she sat down and said, my son was not approached by these people. In fact, the only political contender that sat in our living room to talk to us was Danielle Smith. So what's going on here with the facts? We're going to get them here today, and we're going to sit down with Callan and find out just what happened and just how much Naheed Nenshi and other politicians care about the displacement of citizens by causing them homelessness. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to get straight to the point. We've been talking a bit about what's happening around Calgary, what's happened with housing and people being moved off their land, but why not bring in the actual victim of the crime, Callan? Callan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And Callan, I wanted to bring you on because, again, earlier in this video, I showed the now infamous clip of Naheed Nenshi walking around on stage at the debate that took place just a couple of weeks ago, where essentially he was talking about housing. And of course, Sarah Hoffman brought up your particular story from Midfield Trailer Park. Now, from my understanding of her clip, and again, I'll give you an opportunity to discuss the reality of what she she claimed because we all know these are baseless points. But she essentially said that at that time Naheed Nenshi had moved to destroy that park and get people off of the property. To my understanding, payouts were offered that were very minimal, and there was an offer. Again, I'm basing this off of Nenshi's response. It was to essentially move people into Calgary housing, which we all know if that's the case, Calgary housing is somewhere where you don't want to be. That's not anywhere in the system. But then, of course, Sarah claiming that she sat down with your family. Now, your mother chimed into the chat or the comment section on that video and had said that nobody had sat down with you, that you guys, in fact, had only heard concern from people like Danielle Smith. And again, I wanted to bring you on to kind of touch base on that. So, how about let's start off with what brought you to Midfield, what got your family in there, and kind of what resulted in ending your dream of home ownership in that section of Calgary.
Yeah, Midfield was a saving grace for us. We were renting and our house sold, and that was during the flood in Calgary. So
Okay.
there was like
So
lineups
2012
of, yeah, there
or
was lineups of,
2013. Yeah.
yeah, I can't remember the dates exactly, but that's probably right.
Yeah.
It was very hard to find housing at that time because so many people were affected. And we found the mobile home park because my wife's mother had lived in that park actually many, many years ago. Her trailer was still there in the park actually. So we checked it out and it was amazing. We found a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a yard for $55,000.
Wow.
So
Not bad.
actually affordable. And so we went through the process of getting it, and I can go into that process if you like. It's kind of pertinent.
Well, my main concern was when you had purchased that land, was there any kind of warning or any kind of initial disclaimer that there could possibly be a discussion in the works with Calgary to essentially annex that park?
Yeah. So we were notified of that, but what we were notified of was that the park was relocating. So just like
Mhm.
every other mobile home park that had been relocated in Calgary, they'd all been relocated to new land. I mean, just look at the Dalhousie Park. The city even I think they made co-op pick up and move to make room for the residents of that park. So at that time, I can't remember who was in office at that time, but it was essential for the people of this park to have housing within the city. And the city even paid for the moving of the park and everything. So the residents weren't affected at all. I mean, they had to move locations within the city, but it was all paid for and it wasn't a big deal. So we were notified that that's what was happening. The city had purchased a huge plot of land. They spent $25 million on this plot of land to build the mobile home park as well as affordable housing, and that's where East Hills is. So that whole
Okay.
East Hills, shopping mall with the Costco and the Walmart and the Michaels and everything was all put there for that park. And we were even invited to City Hall to choose where our houses were going to go in the plans of the new mobile home park. So we even had to get permission from the city to buy our house in Midfield. So they had to sign off on us to even buy the house. So
So
we thought
so
this is
what
a great move.
so with all of that pre-work going into things, to essentially say that it's almost a sealed deal essentially that they're going to move you guys to the new location. What made it fall through?
I have no idea. A new mayor came in, and that was Nenshi, and he just decided to scrap the whole thing. And their reasoning was that we couldn't move to the new area because there was no like fire hall close to East Hills, but they've already built like 3 or 4 new communities out there since and there's
Right.
still no fire hall out there, so it was obviously a lie. I have no idea. I think they wanted the land, which is fine. We were fine with moving up to East Hills. I mean, obviously, if the city wants that land, it's a nice piece of land, no big deal. But they pulled the rug out from underneath everybody in that park. It
Right.
was wild.
So again, my understanding is that they obviously tried to get you guys on a technicality because Nenshi. So essentially, you're referring to Dave Brown-Kanye, who was in office before
Yes.
Naheed Nenshi, and again, Nenshi comes in and says, "Okay, scrap it. We want the land for other things." He talks about affordable housing. Now, again, as I pointed out earlier at the beginning of my video, that even areas in the south of town here where they ripped up a golf course to say we're going to build affordable communities, affordable housing, it clearly isn't affordable. What essentially was offered to residents then to cancel the deal? I was told $10,000 settlements.
Yeah. Well, just to backtrack a little bit here, we did go to court over the whole matter, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But in terms of the reasoning as to why they decided to do all this, all the documents are completely redacted. It's just black line after black line after black line. So even to this day, and we had members of the community do the what's it called when you try to get documents uh, out on
Oh,
the
access to information.
right, and they still came just completely redacted. So we have no idea the reasoning or the discussions that they had behind the closed doors. Yeah. What was your question again? Sorry.
Well, it was more the settlements because you
Right.
in particular. Now, again, I don't know about every resident in that park, and we don't need to get into those things because we don't have facts for that. But when it
Hmm.
comes to your trailer, you purchased yours for what I believe, again, from what Sarah claims was $55,000.
Hmm.
You were offered 10,000, and with that 10,000, did they essentially say you have to get out, or did they offer Calgary housing? Again, we know that that's not a great deal, but was that even on the table?
I think Calgary housing was on the table. We didn't get into it much. I know of one person specifically who went into Calgary housing, and that was a tragic story. I can tell you about that. But us specifically, and I know everyone in the park that I know of were offered the same deal, and that was $10,000. We were basically given an eviction notice on it, taped to our door, and given 11 months to move out. So
Wow. And
we
and for context sake, did Naheed Nenshi ever approach anybody in the trailer park? Did he speak with anybody?
No, no, he that was a straight up lie. During that NDP debate, he says he sat down in our homes. No, that's a complete lie. He didn't sit down in anyone's homes. In fact, I believe on an interview he was asked about that if he had approached us, and he said that he tried to talk to us, but we were unreasonable people.
Come
But
on.
I don't remember getting a phone call. He certainly wasn't in the park. That's just a straight up lie.
Unbelievable. And Sarah Hoffman as well. Did she ever sit down? Because again, she claims in that debate speech that she sat in your living room and heard your story and was just a bleeding heart to what had happened to you and your family, that housing was such a concern of hers because essentially this made you homeless. Now,
It,
Naheed Nenshi said, well, but you moved in with your in-laws, so technically you weren't homeless. Homelessness is homelessness. Did Sarah Hoffman ever sit down with you or reach out to you?
she didn't at the time, but yeah, a lot of people did end up homeless. We certainly did. No, she reached out. She was in office at the time, so I don't know where she was back then. And I'll tell you that my wife and I, we used to actually be fairly liberal minded, and we did reach out to the NDP when that was happening, and they did. I can't remember who we spoke to, but they were very much on our sides, and that's fantastic. But when they got voted in, they completely ghosted us, and we never heard from them again. So
Right.
Sarah Hoffman, I mean, she was in office at the time. She was nowhere to be found. Um, yeah, it
So
was crazy.
so clearly this entire discussion that went on during the debates was merely just to pander and try to seem like they're concerned. Look, I've been talking about this on the channel for ages, that of course anytime these parties need your votes, it doesn't matter if they're conservative, liberal, NDP, it's word salad. They tell you what they want to tell you in order to get your votes, and then they don't really come around again until the next election season looking for people to, you know, get their votes again or try to make empty promises. So it just to me seems very mind-blowing that they're on this debate stage, both of them talking like they had a lot of involvement in this, when realistically, it was bureaucracy and leaving you and your family, as well as hundreds of other families, out in the cold. So, um, to my understanding now, you've moved out of Calgary. You're living with your in-laws.
We still are. I mean, it changed all of our lives. We had to reassess everything. We actually had to move out of the trailer park to buy an RV. So we lived in an RV for 3 years and raised our two kids in the RV. We're now doing much better. We've come together as a family and we've bought some land, and we're doing good now. But uh, yeah, in terms of leaving us out in the cold, I mean, we literally had to pack up and leave in December in the middle of a snowstorm. Uh, I have some crazy stories about how they treated us in the park. Did you want to hear some of that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, well, so they first fenced off the entire park, so we could only leave through one exit.
Right.
And then they hired a security force to walk the streets of our mobile home park, which was all just elderly people and veterans and a few young families. Um, Nearing the end, because we were putting up a fight, they installed floodlights that they shone like in front of everyone's homes, that they turned on to shine into our houses in the middle of the night. So we had to buy like extra dark blinds because the light would be shining into your house like daylight in the middle of the night.
Wow.
They didn't allow media into the park. The security guards did not allow media. Well, Daniel Smith had a hell of a time to get in there. And they didn't even allow visitors. So if we had family come, they had to check in at the front and they had to be allowed into the park. Um, it was like we were treated like chuds, you know?
Well, like prisoners.
Yeah.
And this is one of my biggest problems when it comes to actual land ownership anywhere in Canada, is that essentially you buy your property, where you're told you buy your property, whether it's a trailer park, a home, condominium, but you never actually own that property. You're paying taxes on it, of course, but it doesn't give you the rights of ownership. It's essentially the city and the government that own it. And whenever they need to throw their weight around, essentially they just come in and do that. Now, um, when it came time to leave the park, when all of these horrible things finally came to an end, and you guys were given your marching orders, so to speak, is it my understanding? Obviously, you still had the remainder of this mortgage over your head. What happened to the trailer?
Um, yeah, I mean, so people were sticking it out, and some people gave in and took the 10 grand. You got to know it costs about 15 grand just to move a
Hmm.
trailer. And at the time, there was no vacancies in any trailer parks within the city. the closest spot we could find to move our trailer was in Hannah, which is 3 hours outside of
Yep.
Calgary. So, and I had a new business at the time, so I couldn't just up and leave. But yeah, some people burned their houses down. A few people committed suicide.
Oh my God.
It was insane. People, every morning we woke up, there was new houses just being torn down by bulldozers. They would just like park a bulldozer in front of your house and just leave it there as like a warning. It was insane. Sorry, I kind of
Unbelievable.
went past your question there. When it came to
No,
move
that's
out,
okay.
yeah, so there was a lot of sharks coming into the town, into the park, and just kind of lowballing everyone. You know, hey, I'll buy it for $4,000. I'll buy it for $5,000. We finally found a buyer for ours. What did we get? I think it was 12, which was pretty high. And ours was the last trailer to leave. It literally was driving out of the park the very last day we were being evicted. So we recovered 20, and so yeah, we retained a 30 some odd $1,000 mortgage, which we're still paying off for sure. It's lumped in with a bunch of other debt, you know.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, we're still
Unbelievable.
paying it off.
So the city essentially moves in and says, your land isn't actually your land. We're taking your property. You can, however, carry the mortgage.
Yeah.
Um, and it's on you to find somewhere else to live. If Naheed Nenshi doesn't believe that that is true homelessness, I don't know what is.
Well, there are
Um,
people that were home. I mean, we know of a guy who had to live in his truck shortly after. We know of one fellow who was in a wheelchair. He got shoved into Calgary housing, and they had to take his dog because he wasn't allowed pets into Calgary housing. His only friend in the world. It was a travesty. I mean, we're talking veterans. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was a lot.
You know, in my mind, it doesn't matter if it's a veteran, if it's the elderly, if it's people who just, again, yourself, a starting family that they're just looking for affordability. When you purchase property anywhere, that property should be yours indefinitely, so long as you're up to date on your charges, your fees, your taxes. I don't believe that a city has any right to come in and rezone or repurpose without again, consulting the residents and without getting a written pen to paper agreement. Since you've left, has there, I know you mentioned court earlier, has there been any movement on appealing or trying to, again, try to retain anything that's over anybody's heads in terms of mortgages and the legal system?
No, I think our court battle was one and done. We had a nice lawyer from, I think they were with the Guardian Group. I cannot remember his name now. I wish I could, but he did it pro bono. Great lawyer, and you wouldn't believe the court case. We were kind of trying to fight on grounds of discrimination because a lot of us were not super, rich, and it's like, what do you expect us to do? and we lost in court on the grounds that we weren't a group that could be discriminated against. So
Wow.
so somehow there's some list of groups of people who can and cannot be discriminated against. I don't have that list. I would like to see it. Um,
Yeah.
but it was a wild court case. It was in the news, and yeah, I mean, we were just lambasted in the media during the time. People called us squatters. Uh, no one wanted to talk about it at all. And thankfully, Danielle Smith had her radio show at the time, and she came to our park numerous times and interviewed us, me and my wife, numerous times, as well as other members of the community. And she even spent the last month of us moving out, that last December. She spent the entire month talking solely about the midfield situation, because she was just like, how is no one talking about this? This is a whole community of people being kicked to the dirt, and no one's talking about this. So um, yeah, we switched to becoming kind of conservatives because the only people that came to our aid were conservatives.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
you know, it's funny. I've had Danielle Smith on the channel. I've been very
Oh wow.
blessed to have her sit down and chat with me. And again, I've talked to her about my bid to run for mayor in the next civic election, and how I want to change things for people. But the one thing I find about Danielle Smith is that I told her this during the interview, that I've never felt that my vote went further at any election in my life, in my entire voting career. And she's clearly stood up for not only conservative values, but for Albertans in general. You know, people have their back and forth opinions about, is she doing a good job? Is she not? Is she overstepping on certain things? And again, that's politics. But what I find with Danielle Smith is that um, she's very forthright in her convictions, but she also stands behind them. And I think that if we can get more people like her, we're going to be in a good spot as a province, and hopefully, Callan, things. It sounds like things are moving ahead for you at least, and things are in a better spot. But I'm glad that you came on the show tonight to talk a little bit about the claims made by Naheed Nenshi and the other NDP representatives, because essentially they're going to tout things like this. They're going to try to advertise these kind of cells. Again, this is them looking for the votes, like they give a damn about people. And essentially, we're seeing that it's all just lies. But I guess in closing, is there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation, or anything that we missed?
Yeah, I mean, there's one other thing. There were other people trying to get us a park built. There were other developers at the time during Nenshi's reign, trying to get a park built for us. And some of them were like, just give us a couple extra years and we'll build a park for these guys. Like, we want to help them out. And they were all denied.
Wow.
So, I
And the
mean,
city just doesn't care. It's all about what they want when they want it.
and I think they just don't want mobile home parks. I think there is real discrimination going on there. You know, we have that
Yeah.
TV show, which doesn't at all show what an actual mobile home park is like. It was a great
Right.
community.
Right.
But it really is great affordable housing for people, and a good way for young people or anyone to get into the housing market. It's really sad to see this be, be uh,
The end
looked
result.
down
Yeah,
upon.
it's funny you say that. You know, my mother-in-law used to live in a trailer in a small town, and it wasn't in like a trailer park per se, but just a neighborhood of trailers mixed in with residential housing.
Mm,
But trailers these days, like again, me people from shows like the Trailer Park Boys have this misconception that it's drugs, that it's gang-related activity, that it's
yeah.
dirty and horrible. Some of these trailers are built better than some of today's standard bungalow homes, and they're
Oh
quite
yeah.
nice on the
And
inside. And
better than condos,
uh,
that's for sure.
Absolutely. So I mean, again, it's a matter of affordability. You hear people talking about tiny homes these days, or what works for their lifestyles, and so long as trailer parks are built up to code or up to the city's likings, I don't really see an issue with them. And it's a shame at what happened with Midfield. I know there was another one in the southeast that was up for grabs at one point that still appears to be there. What the city's going to do moving forward, I'm not sure, but I can honestly tell you that I definitely side with your grievances with the city, with what happened. It blows my mind how, again, when bureaucracy and red tape come into it, that elected officials that we elect to represent us can just step in at any point and take everything away from us, including our
Yeah.
futures. When you talk about people that essentially gave up on life in order to um, solve their
Several,
problem,
yeah.
or at least,
And not even
yeah,
just
that's
not one or
so
two, but
heartbreaking. So
yeah.
heartbreaking. Definitely a sign of the times as to where we are as a country now, and hopefully again we can see some better results, not just for Calgarians but Albertans and Canadians down the line. But Callan, again, I thank you for coming out to the show. Really appreciative of you being here, and we'll maybe stay in touch and try to get you updated at some point, see where things go with you in the future. But I thank you for your time, sir, and I thank you for stopping by. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Best of luck in the future.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Callan coming on to deliver cold, hard facts when it comes to Naheed Nenshi and good old Sarah Hoffman's bogus claims over caring about his family, not only his family, but those that were involved in this terrible, terrible debacle. Now, I wanted to showcase this interview because, once again, it definitely highlights why this government really, at the end of the day, only comes around pandering when it's time to get votes. They really just don't give a darn when it comes to people's lifestyles, people's ways of living. At least the only person I've seen it out of, again, is Premier Danielle Smith. Again, it was a pleasure to have her here on the show. Hopefully she'll see this video. Hopefully this will be some ammunition for her when it comes time to call out the ridiculous claims made by the NDP of so-called caring for Albertans. And again, I hope Callan's family, I wish them nothing but the best. Now, just in mind, to keep in mind, he is a business owner and he's out in Langdon, Alberta, which is just outside of Calgary city limits. He owns the only tattoo shop outside of Calgary. So if you're looking for some ink, head out to Lucky Lark Tattoos. Again, I know a lot of people on this channel that are around the Calgary area that may or may not be looking for that. But hey, shameless plug, guys. Go support some local business. At the very least, stop by, and if you're ever in Langdon, and let them know that the Fringe says hello. And I thank everybody for coming in to watch this interview. I hope it was informative for you guys. I hope it painted a broader picture for everybody as to who actually cares about us in government versus those that are just looking for phony support. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. If it has, make sure to click your bell for notifications and join us every Friday here on the channel for Friday Night Fringe, where we go over everything that's happened in the past week in politics, everything coming up in the week ahead, and a little bit of back and forth within the community. It's always great to talk to you guys outside of making these videos, and I always look forward to hearing what each and every one of you have to say outside of making these videos. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you there this upcoming Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one.